Graduate Education here at MIT. And joining us for today's session is one of our great graduate students, Brandon Rios, who is about to come on camera in a few. Perfect. Welcome, Brandon. And today's session is really going to be a conversation between Brandon and myself to demystify graduate education, what it means to pursue a PhD, and what it's like being a graduate student at MIT. If you're one of our guests, we encourage you as questions arise to utilize the Q&A function on your Zoom dashboard. By utilizing that function, we'll get questions from the audience. We'll pull questions that are like, and we'll reserve some time towards the end of today's session for Brandon or myself to answer questions you may have. We are joined in the background by two members of our grad diversity staff, Noel Wakefield, our Assistant Dean for Diversity Initiatives, and Jocelyn Powers, and they'll be helping us curate both the questions and providing some relevant links as topics arise during our conversation in the chat so that you can get the appropriate information. The first thing I'd alert you all of is the fact that tomorrow afternoon, we have our MIT graduate fair where you can hear more, our virtual graduate fair, where you can hear more from our graduate departments about their programs, the types of students who do well in their programs, and how you can put together a competitive application. So we'll put the link to that in the chat so that if any of you who are attending today haven't yet registered for the virtual fair, you can do that. And let's jump right in, Brandon, with you introducing yourself. Could you tell us a bit about your background, where you're from, undergraduate institution, what interested you in pursuing a PhD?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Streete, for having me. Thank you for organizing this. It's my pleasure to be here. A little bit about myself. My name is Brandon Rios. He's he, him pronouns. I grew up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. My home is okay. I know we had a couple hurricanes, so a lot of people ask me if my home and family are fine. So yes, South Florida didn't get hit too hard. I grew up in a Hispanic household, speaking Spanish and English growing up. Important thing to note, and this ties into my journey a little bit, is neither of my parents are scientists or engineers. So it's kind of interesting how I found myself on this path towards graduate education and a PhD in engineering. But I always found myself interested in science, asking a lot of questions. I used to take apart and put together all my toys. So I just was always naturally curious, and that put me on a path towards science. And then I was fortunate enough to do my undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering at Washington University in St. Louis. So that took me far away from home, explored a new city, new culture, new demographic. South Florida, I felt very comfortable with my identity being a Hispanic man. And then moving away to college, I was exposed to many different cultures and ethnicities. So that I felt was interesting. But I didn't have too many role models who looked like me or who grew up like me in science and engineering. So that's why I'm interested in sharing my story and just letting people know that, typically underrepresented minorities don't find themselves in this type of career because of the lack of mentors and role models. As that's what I've seen in my experience. So I'm happy to share my story and just let people know that there are those who look like you and grew up like you in this field, and just introduce people to the field of science and just share with them that it is attainable, especially, doing a PhD at MIT. I was fortunate enough to do the MIT Summer Research Program after my junior year of college, and that kind of got my foot in the door. I was doing very high level technical research with a faculty in the mechanical engineering department, and that's really what opened my eyes to graduate school in general. That really confirmed my ambition to pursue a PhD. And so, just being here, connecting, growing my network, making friends with the faculty in the department really empowered me to apply, and I was accepted. And now I'm in my third year, and I give back to the same program that I was an intern in. And now I'm a pod leader, and I mentor interns from other universities and help them with their applications and just share with them my experiences and my stories. So it's a pleasure to be here and to meet everyone virtually on Zoom, and I'm happy to continue the conversation offline and answer any questions you guys may have.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Brandon, for that introduction. And so you really got to the heart of why we have MIT Mondays. It's really to demystify, the journey from being an undergraduate student who may have had a passion around research or not, and then how do you get to graduate school, right? So let's sort of roll back a bit. You said a lot in your introduction, but talk to me a bit about you're an undergraduate student out of your familiar environment in a new state, in a new city. How did you get exposed to even knowing that you love this thing called engineering? Talk to me a bit about how you found that passion and what are the people and or courses that may have brought about that passion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will admit, going into college, I had no intention of pursuing graduate school or, a PhD in general. This kind of all these opportunities just fell into place like, Lego bricks, and one thing led to another. So I'll start with my first year. I hadn't even heard the term undergraduate research. I didn't even know that was an opportunity to be had by myself and others. Um, but I knew I wanted to do engineering. Like I said, I was always curious and I always liked to be challenged. So I chose biomedical engineering, which was notorious for being one of the hardest majors at that university. And I welcome the challenge. It was hard, but I kind of built a community within my peers. We're all going through it together. So I met a lot of friends and we would battle through the homeworks and study for exams together. And this was even before I even ever considered research. But then I started looking into the careers of my professors, like what are they doing? Surely they don't just teach, and it turns out they all had very famous labs doing incredible research. A few years ago, all the rage was this thing called organ on a chip. Like can we model the organs and organ systems in vitro in the laboratory to better study and understand diseases? And that was a concept that just amazed me. I was like, how can we build a brain or a heart, from scratch? So it was like these concepts that just got my brain moving and I wanted to participate in that. And it was actually my academic advisor. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have engineering or general academic advisors at your university. He presented me with an opportunity to do summer research with predominantly uh, underrepresented minority groups in STEM. So this was called the MARC U-Star program, Maximizing Access to Research Career MARC. Uh, Probably many universities have this, but I was lucky enough to apply and was accepted to this program, and I was doing research full time over the summer after my freshman year, which I would say is pretty early, but I thought it really helped my career doing research early, seeing what it's like to be a graduate student, seeing if that was something that I would enjoy. And uh, so thanks to my professors that I had in my intro biomedical engineering classes, they kind of connected me with professors, or like I had already an intro. They were my professors, so I just sent an email and asked them if I could work in their lab over the summer upon the recommendation of my academic advisor. So that's kind of how I got introduced to research in the first place.
Perfect. So you're pursuing this undergraduate research in your first year as a freshman. I would assume you fell in love with it. And then you decided, oh, I'm going to go beyond my local institution and apply to some research programs elsewhere. Talk to me a bit about that process and how did you land at the MIT Summer Research Program?
So that was another opportunity that fell into my lap thanks to my advisor. He said, "Hey, you've done research here at Wash U. Now the next step would be to, expand, see a different city, spend time at a different university doing different or similar research." So um, the application came into my email box and I applied. And it's really important to understand like what are the qualifications for the application. And one of the main things is, or one of the factors is prior research experience. It's not the end all be all, but thankfully I had research experience going into this application. And because of the time by this time it was after my junior year. So I was working in my undergrad lab for almost 2 years. So I had accrued a good bit of research, contributed to a few projects, got my name on a few publications. And what you guys will learn in graduate school is publications are kind of the name of the game. So can you contribute? Can you author your own papers? Because that shows scientific independence. So, and these are all things that I found out through my mentors. My graduate student mentor when I was an undergrad was unbeknownst to me, she was shaping me into a future researcher. So all the things that I was just tagging along, watching her do, I was learning it, myself. And she was setting me up to be on her papers and kind of helping me understand the what it takes to be a graduate student. So when I was lucky enough to apply to MSRP, I had a good bit of background and a few publications that kind of spoke to my desire and ambition to pursue graduate school, because that's what the MIT summer research program is all about, is really giving you an full-time experience as to what life as a graduate student is like. So very, very grateful to have done the program, and I felt like I was well prepared to based on my research experience at the time.
Thanks, and I'll use that as an opportunity for us to put in the chat a link to the MIT Summer Research Program. The applications are just about to be open in a few weeks. So folks who are interested who are not applying to graduate school this year, and you may be interested or have friends who are interested in summer research opportunities, we'll put the link to the MSRP in the chat so that you could explore a little bit more about that program. So thanks, Brandon, for that. So you did summer research in your junior year, and of course, that's the year I would assume just before you applied to graduate school. Talk to me about one, the process of applying to graduate school. And I know for many students, applying to a place like MIT may be intimidating. So talk to me about how you came to the sort of that place of comfort that, oh, you were going to apply to MIT as well.
Yeah, I definitely did felt nervous still. Having done the MIT summer research program was not a guarantee of me getting into the graduate program. However, my time here, I really worked not only towards my research project, but on growing and enhancing my personal network, my professional and academic network. So just meeting graduate students, making sure I had a close familiar bond with my graduate student mentor who was, an MIT student, because those relationships are pretty invaluable. Even if I didn't end up coming to MIT, having that connection with a researcher at MIT in the lab here, just doing the work that really interests me is incredible. Somebody that you can ask questions to. Oh, what is the department like? What is this lab like? What are the qualifying exams like? These are all things that I had somebody who I can ask. So I think mentors have really shaped my whole career, and the sense of community that MSRP fosters really allowed me to feel comfortable here. I, on behalf of the Office of Graduate Education, I attend conferences, and the number one question I get is MIT as cutthroat and competitive as they say? And my immediate instinct is to say no. And that's why I'm glad we're doing these webinars, demystifying MIT is the right way to put it, because I feel like there's a lot of notoriety behind MIT's atmosphere. And I think if you approach it with an open mind that, there are people like you, it's not that hard to find. Just step into the grad office and somebody will connect you with somebody friendly. And that was really important to me, having met and known Dr. Noel Wakefield for years before even coming to MIT. That was really comforting, to have somebody who I can just walk into an office and just talk if I'm having a tough time, or during the application process as well. So I'm grateful to have done MSRP and built that sense of community with administrators and staff, as well as with faculty, and most importantly, my peers. A PhD is no small feat. I'm here for 5, 6 years, so I want to be doing it with people who I feel comfortable around. So I made lifelong friends in MSRP, some of whom are here at MIT, others who are at other top universities doing great things. So I really felt comfortable with the community that I had already established, and I knew that MIT was a welcoming space, at least for me and others like me. So that's kind of what gave me the sense of confidence to even apply, first of all. But also my academic merit was of importance as well. My research merit, all the experiences that I had accrued going into the application, um, you know, that's also very important. So the research experience, the GPA and the transcript. I mean, these are basic things that go into an application, but these things to keep in mind of. So I just felt like I had a shot, at least, having been here already. But even if I didn't do the summer research experience, I hope that others who didn't have a chance to do MSRP ask questions. Ask your mentors in your undergrad institution who are doing research, ask the current grad students about what their process was like, because hearing multiple people's points of views was very invaluable for me. What's important to go into an application? What do I write in my personal statement? What goes into this box? And because you will write a few essays, and MSRP does a good job of preparing you for that. So I'm grateful, having done MSRP a few months before I was applying to grad school. It was all fresh in my mind. I had a good working draft of my application already. I had just, come off a summer where I was close with the faculty who would write my letter of recommendation. So getting a letter of rec internal to the university you're applying to is pretty powerful. So I'm grateful at the network that I built, uh, the colleagues that I became friends with, the staff, and just the overall culture and atmosphere of MIT that I was exposed to before applying. That's what empowered me, and I felt comfortable applying and confident of my chances in doing so.
Perfect. So I know many of our attendees are probably applying to graduate schools currently. Um, so in a real practical sense, if you had one piece of advice to give to a student currently applying to graduate school, what would you give in terms of how to be most effective in terms of putting together the application?
hmm I think just telling a story is super powerful. An application is not just a bullet pointed list of your accomplishments. It's not a resume. It's how do your lived experiences influence your ambition and your future career goals. That's the number one thing I feel like goes in an application. Like, so, okay, you did 3 summer programs. That's great. And can you describe the research that you did? That's great. But what is the greater impact? What did that do for you? Not necessarily what you did for the lab, but how has that bettered you as a scientist, a researcher, or just a person in general? At the end of the day, like I said earlier, a PhD is a commitment. The faculty want to see that you have the ambition to see it through all the way to the end. So, do you have the research experience to prove your capabilities? But even if you don't, I get the question a lot, oh, I'm in this department, but I'm dead set on applying to this other department. Do you think I have a chance? And I'm like, I absolutely. What has all the experience that you gained in the first department? How does that make you unique? And how can you shape those experiences to make you even more competitive at the other department? So I think it's just the way that you sell yourself. There's like a fine line between selling yourself and being overly arrogant, I would say. So this goes for job interviews and just any meetings with, people superior to your position. You want to be able to express your capabilities and skills, and how those make you uniquely suited to fill the role that you're applying for and not just tooting your own horn. So I think it's important to get many eyes on your application. So you'll write a draft, you'll go through it maybe with your friends and definitely your uh, research supervisor if you have one at the time, but definitely grad students, any directors of any programs that you're in or clubs or professors, anyone that you can get to get a pair of eyes on your application is super invaluable because I probably made like 8 or 9 drafts of my application just based on how many people I went to and asked for feedback. Um, but definitely telling a powerful story based on your experiences is that's really the message that I took away. And I read applications currently. I've read applications for my undergrad institution and also for MSRP. So I feel like I'm in a position to give a bit of advice on that. So definitely don't just take it from me. Definitely hear what a lot of people have to say from the Office of Graduate Education at MIT, but also beyond. Many graduate students would be happy to share with you what it is that they wrote and what advice they were given at the time. But definitely just tell a meaningful story. Um, I think that goes a long way in your applications.
Perfect. So you applied to graduate school. I would assume you would have received multiple offers. And for our audience, we're sort of going through the life cycle of applying to graduate school so you can know what to expect. So you received multiple offers. What made you choose MIT?
So um, I had already experienced what it's like to be at MIT. The other schools that I had applied to, I had never even got to see or visit. Uh, so this is a bit personal to me, but I was actually accepted to MIT before I even heard back from any other school. So to me, that was a dream come true. You know, MIT, for my field, mechanical engineering, you can't go wrong with. And I had already worked here for a summer, so I knew that I wanted to come here. So once I was accepted to MIT, there was no nowhere else was going to tempt me. So I was very fortunate to get into MIT and immediately, I knew I was coming here. But I knew that, what shaped that decision wasn't just the allure or the name brand of MIT. It was, again, my lived experience, having been here, having worked here, having met the staff and the faculty and other peers of mine from the program who were accepted here. So I knew that I was being already set up to succeed. I wasn't coming in blind, having never seen the city. I had never seen the winters, I will admit, and that was a bit of a shock. But um, at least academically and research wise, I felt like I would fit in already. And the question I get a lot is, oh, did you join the same lab that you did your summer internship with? And the answer is no. My internship faculty actually introduced me to the faculty I currently work with. And I was very grateful for that because, again, it's up to you to do your research on the faculty that you would want to work with. But this was one faculty that I hadn't even considered. She was new actually. So he introduced me to this newer faculty. She was just starting her second year. And uh, this was after I was accepted, but this is a little bit more about finding your research lab fit. But I guess to answer your question, Dr. Street, I once I applied here, I knew I wanted to come here because of all the experiences and the familiarity I had with the institute and the department and the research. Um, I just felt like I already felt safe and supported, having this community that was fostered through MSRP and the Office of Graduate Education in general. Even if you didn't do MSRP, the Office of Graduate Education is an incredible resource for new incoming students.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brandon. And I should point out there a bunch of links being put in the chat, so feel free to utilize those links as they apply to you. So you're at MIT. Talk to us a bit about what is the research you're doing now.
Oh man, how much time do we have? This is one of my favorite things to talk about. Uh, so I'm in a mechanical engineering lab, very focused on skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle is a ubiquitous tissue in the human body, well known for it's a contractile tissue, so it's a force generating tissue, and it powers all voluntary movement in the body. So super important tissue in the body, and there are many diseases that affect the normal function of skeletal muscle. So not only are we interested in skeletal muscle as a biological actuator, which has applications in biorobotics, but also as its regenerative capabilities. And just there are many diseases that affect skeletal muscle. So we have branches in the lab that are strictly focused on biorobotics. Can we build robots that are powered by cells? So that's pretty powerful in itself. And where my research specifically is more on disease modeling. So taking skeletal muscle, engineering it into tissues and studying it in the context of disease. So can we approximate the healthy state, and can we approximate diseases by changing a few things about the environment of the cells? Specifically, I focus on the disease ALS. If you guys might remember, the ice bucket challenge back in the day was to raise awareness for this very terrible disease that affects both neurons and muscle. So it's very little is known about the disease. So that's why it's important that there's a lot of research going on into it. You know, what causes the disease? How does the disease progress? How can we test and maybe develop therapies for this disease? So these are all questions that I have in my own daily life as a researcher. Uh, First of all, finding what the disease onset is, where it happens in the body. Is it in the brain, the spinal cord, or the skeletal muscle? So we do a lot of experiments, and I'm primarily in the lab. So I do hands-on experiments. You might talk to other students who are primarily computational. My work is very much in the wet lab. So I'm growing cells, feeding cells, engineering tissues, and testing tissues every day. And we learn a little bit every day. You know, at the end of my PhD, I might have found just one little clue, one little piece of the puzzle that is ALS, and that would be pretty profound to me. So that's why I enjoy my career to begin with, is I think it's very rewarding. You know, taking a project, something, a question that a handful of people in the world are trying to answer, and at the end of my PhD, delivering even one little piece of knowledge to the scientific community, I think would be really profound. So um, that's pretty much what I do. And I present my work at conferences, and I go to even internally within MIT, I'm sharing my work with my peers in mechanical engineering. So yeah, people get confused all the time. Like, wait, I thought you said you were in mechanical engineering. So yeah, the department is pretty broad. There's a handful of faculty within mechanical engineering who do tissue or bio related research. So I'm friends with a lot of people in that space. Well, there's a few people, but I'm friends with all of them in the MechE who do tissue or bio related research. And that kind of builds like a smaller community, a more tight-knit community within mechanical engineering. Um, so I'm happy to talk anyone's ear off about skeletal muscle or in vitro disease modeling, but that's a little bit about what my research is at MIT.
So perfect. You actually addressed one of the questions I was going to have. So it's evident that um, your work is really interdisciplinary, right? How, as a graduate student, do you think you were prepared to do that interdisciplinary work coming from the background that you had? And what advice would you give an applicant who is thinking about doing something that's not quite what they did at the undergraduate level, but it's where their passion may be?
That's a great question. And that's a question I have a lot of personal experience with. So I mentioned to you guys I'm a biomedical engineering by training. So that's on the macro scale. Think of like prosthetics, biomedical devices, you know, actual like building hardware that you can touch and hold. Now I'm kind of transitioned. So that was is a different training, very much a different scale. And now I'm in the mechanical engineering department, which is, you know, they want you to achieve the breadth of knowledge that is mechanical engineering. So I've had to take some very uh, niche classes that I never had exposure to as an undergraduate. So, you know, I did a little bit of uh, design work, like computer-aided design, CAD, as mechanical engineers would be more familiar with. But again, I was a biomedical engineer, so I had only ever used the software like once or twice. Mechanical engineers use it every day. You're designing parts every day. You're manufacturing parts every day. I never even 3D printed anything before coming to graduate school. And then my first year, I'm thrown into the deep end, having to learn how to 3D print with filament, 3D print with resin, manufacture on a mill, traditional machining, metal machining on a mill and a lathe, using a laser cutter for the first time. So I was really just thrown, and these were opportunities presented to me through courses. So I took a manufacturing class in which taught me all these traditional manufacturing techniques: injection molding, thermoforming, metal sheet forming, casting, uh, additive manufacturing. So that's the 3D printing I mentioned. So I learned so much in just one semester, and I never had any experience in it. And that's what I ended up taking my qualifying exam in. So that's kind of a deeper can of worms, is the qualifying exam. But if anyone is interested in mechanical engineering, I can share my experience with the qualifying exam. But to your question, Dr. Street, I was not very equipped to do everything that was asked of me. So I had to go out and learn it. That's part of being a graduate student, is being, you know, independent, and like, I don't know how to solve this problem, but let me go ask someone who may know, and they can teach me. So it's a lot of self-learning, and you really learn how you learn best. So I'm a very visual and hands-on learner. You can try to tell me how to do an equation 50 times, or like in math, for example, but I'm not going to get it unless I actually write it down myself or see someone write it down. So you learn how you learn best, and I learn best by doing as well. So you can write me a procedure on how to 3D print, SLA print this complex mold out of resin, and then unless I do it myself, it's not going to stick. So I spent hours and hours in the shop learning how to use the traditional metal machining, but also the plastic machining as well. So I'm very grateful to be at an institution that has all these resources for teaching. Uh, I see the day in the life of me just dropped, so it's a little
Per-
embarrassing, but I hope you guys
Perfect.
enjoy.
And this is a good time to remind our audience that should you have questions you want to ask Brandon or someone here from the Office of Graduate Education, feel free to put those questions using the Q&A function on your Zoom dashboard, and we'll get to them. I think I have a couple more questions. And so for the audience to also know that we did not prepare for this interview, so I'm asking Brandon things on the fly, and I'm learning things about him that I didn't even know before, right? So Brandon, someone may be listening to our conversation and thinking, oh, MIT is perfect. The life of a graduate student is probably the best thing one could do, but I'm certain you have encountered challenges. Talk to us a bit about what are some of the challenges you may have encountered and how you would have either sought help or had those challenges resolved.
Certainly. Yeah, the life of a graduate student is definitely not without its challenges, but that's kind of what makes it a rewarding experience. I've definitely struggled in classes. I come with a very positive attitude because I do love it here, but it's not be, it hasn't all been easy. I'm the kind of person who, like, if I'm struggling, I seek help, just like Dr. Street said. So like, where do I find that help? A lot of the times it's from my own peers in my own research lab. If I'm running an experiment and I'm 6 hours in and I'm a little bit lost, I have no issue asking for help. And it is true, I'm one of the senior members of the lab, just because time-wise, I've been here for the longest. There's one student who's been here longer than me. But we do have members who are very diverse. So like I said, I don't come from a very strong design and manufacturing background, but we do have very strong design and manufacturing engineers in the lab. So no issue with me asking, hey, does my part look okay? Or how do I use this function in SolidWorks? Or what is your recommendation for, I need to manufacture this? Should I print FDM or SLA? And you guys may not know what these terms mean, but these are the questions that I ask every day. And if I'm having trouble with an experiment or I fail in an experiment, I think that's okay. It's important to just learn from it. And I have no issue bringing a failure to my advisor. my academic advisor is my boss pretty much in graduate school. So she's the professor whose lab I work for. And I meet with her once a week, 30 minutes, and it's updates. It's here's what I did this week, here's what I plan on doing the following week. And some weeks it's, listen, I just ran a 2-week experiment and it failed. And I can't collect any of the data. The tissue collapsed. And then we go back and forth. Why did that happen? What could we do better? Was it an error on my part? Is it a systemic thing in the lab? Is there, contamination going around? So it's like we go back and forth a lot, but the main message is it's okay to fail. You're still going to be supported as a student from your advisor, but you learn from these failures. And so it's only a failure if you don't learn from it and you keep letting it happen. So I think that's been most of my graduate career has been failing and learning and then not doing it again, or not failing again, but learning from it and learning how to do it better the next time. And the research is the fun part. If I'm being honest, the courses are necessary because they support your overall toolbox. And as a researcher, you do a lot of research, but you also want to gain a deep understanding of the mechanics, for example, or the fluid dynamics if you're studying fluidic system. So these are all courses that you choose to take. You have to take courses, of course, but you can choose which ones. And basically the question is like, what do you want to learn more about? So I think it's a lot more free in graduate school when you're talking about like taking courses. But that's honestly where I've struggled the most because I tend to prioritize my research. And in graduate school, you don't have someone who's overseeing you saying, hey, you got to come into work at 9 a.m. and then leave. No one's managing your time or your schedule. So it's been on you. It's been on me, to manage my own time and make sure I'm prioritizing appropriately and distributing my time between class and research and extracurriculars and my personal life. So work-life balance is a question I get a lot as a graduate student is what is that like? And I'm sure many of you have that questions. Not only am I a graduate student, but I'm also living in the city. Like what is that like? Um, I don't know if Dr. Street, that was one of your planned questions.
Yes. So we continue, since it was one of my questions, just continue
Okay.
there.
So yeah, I mean, being here at MIT is more than just being a student. So I had to learn how to live in this city. Again, I come from South Florida. Uh, Public transportation was not really a thing where I grew up. So just learning the train, that's like how to get around. The city bikes, the blue bikes, how to get around Boston, where to live. MIT offers on-campus housing options, but I decided to live off campus. I found a couple of roommates who were starting their first year at MIT as well, just off a Facebook search. So I literally met strangers who were coming into MIT at the same time as me, and we did a housing search. We became friends, and then we decided to get a place nearby MIT so I can walk or bike to campus, which I think is super valuable. You may want to consider your commute to work every day. What is that going to be like? Do you have to take the train every day? Are you going to live a little bit further outside of Cambridge to maybe get a different, maybe a different place suits your needs, and then you have to commute to work every day. So what is that like? Finances are a big question. Where's the money? Where do I get the money to pay for rent? So I will elaborate a little bit on that. And if you guys are unaware of external funding options, definitely look into that. MIT has resources that point you towards fellowships that you can apply for. Um, I will disclose myself. I applied to the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, and I won it my first year. So that provides funding for 3 years of my graduate career. So it'll run out after this year, to which I'll have to apply for different fellowships. But there is internal funding with the department. Your advisor will, of course, fund you, although they might ask you to apply for fellowships at least. But who you're doing research for is kind of responsible for funding everything. So not only is your tuition paid, you also receive a stipend, like a salary, a monthly salary that pays for your rent, groceries, daily expenses. So yeah, I mean, I would never say that I've felt nervous or anxious about my income living here. I mean, Boston is not a cheap city to live in, but definitely you're going to have to be responsible with your money. You know, we're not in the industry yet making the big bucks. So this is an investment and that's okay. And I understand that. So I live my life, understanding that. Um, but yeah, I'm funded through a fellowship. Uh, it's very department specific, like how long they're willing to fund you. Of course, it's a good idea to apply for fellowships anyways, because that kind of proves that you have this external body vouching for you. So the National Science Foundation is basically vouching for my capabilities as a researcher and they're funding me. So, and that kind of gives you the freedom to choose whichever research lab you want. I'm not tied to anyone's funding. If I really want to work with this person, with this faculty, but say they don't have the funding to afford another grad student, you come in with your own funding, you can work with whoever you want. So that kind of gave me the freedom to choose whoever's lab I want and really make sure that I'm coming to grad school to do the research that I intended on doing.
Perfect, Brandon. I want to get to some of the audience questions which are coming in. So just a reminder, just place your questions for Brandon in the Q&A function on your dashboard. So Brandon, I have two questions left for you. The first is, I know some students, some attendees may be thinking, what's next for Brandon? What are you thinking post-graduation?
So I only recently started thinking about this question. My first 2 years, I was like, oh, graduation's so far away. I don't even have to think about what the next step is. But now, like entering my third year, I feel like I'm just starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm working towards a big publication now, and that will have a pretty significant impact on my graduation end date, whether there was another paper that's expected of me or another project that I can reasonably do before I graduate, um, that will determine like when my actual graduation date is. But yeah, I fully expect it to be here for 5 years, whether that may fluctuate plus or minus 6 months or a year, I don't know. But now starting my third year, I'm fortunate enough to be doing a semester-long internship with uh, Pfizer. So Pfizer is one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, and they're located 2 blocks away from MIT. So MIT offers a course that pairs you with a Pfizer team for the semester. So I'm actually taking a class to work part-time at Pfizer. So I'm not getting paid any extra, but I get my foot in the door with Pfizer, which is a company that I would, has virtually unlimited resources, massive pharma company, thousands of employees across the world. To me, I think you can't go wrong with starting your career at Pfizer. So I'm very grateful to get my foot in the door working with Pfizer right now. And this kind of is pushing me to a career in the industry. As a researcher, and especially with a PhD from MIT, I'll be in some pretty top company, in terms of my application. So they're I've spoken with hiring managers there already, and they're looking for people who can understand the research, but also lead teams, So how is my team building skills? How do I work with a team? Can I lead a team? So that's kind of the goal that I see for myself is being an authority on the research that I've trained in technically for 5 or so years, and then overseeing the work of a team who's doing something in that similar realm or not. The point of a PhD is like I learn how to solve problems. I encounter an unfamiliar problem and I know how to tackle it. So that can be broadly applied to any subject. So I very much look forward to a career in the industry where I'm solving problems. The companies has a mission. They want to find drug targets for this disease, and I will have the experience, but also just the will and the desire to like see it through to its completion and the know-how to get it done. So I definitely see myself pursuing a career in the industry, the biotech pharmaceutical industry in the next few years.
Perfect. And my final question before we respond to the questions from the audience is, what message would you give to students who might feel apprehensive about applying to competitive programs like MIT?
I would first say, you know, you have to ask yourself, like, is this something you really want? And if it is, then you should have no uh apprehension whatsoever in applying. You know, if you've done the work, you know, you've tailored your application to MIT, you've listed faculty that you're interested in working with, and you support your application with relevant research experience, you know, everyone should feel comfortable applying to MIT. You know, MIT is a place where you can thrive with the right mindset. You know what I mean? Like feeling like if you enter the program feeling like you don't belong, that's when I think people struggle the most. You know, you have to approach it with the mindset that I'm going to succeed here and I know what resources there are for me. I think it's too easy for somebody to sit and suffer alone. You know, I sit in classes all the time where I have no idea what's going on. And I look around and I'm like, dang, everyone in here is so smart. You know, nobody's even asking questions. But then if I just talk to my neighbor, like, did you understand what just happened? They're like, nope. So you're not alone, basically. You know, MIT is going to be a hard place. Of course, there's no question about that. But if you choose to sit and suffer alone, then it'll be a lot harder. You know, all it takes is one word to your neighbor in class, in a class where you know nobody. Be like, hey, do you want to study for the exam later? Boom. One, you just made a friend. Two, you made a study buddy that can help you with the class. And now you're going at it, you know, two minds are better than one. So I think just approaching it with that mindset, like MIT can be a place for you to thrive, but it can also, you know, be really hard if you let it. And but it's important to also know the resources that are available to you. Professor office hours. There's tutoring groups for graduate, like other graduate students will tutor for classes that you can take. um, TA, so there's teaching assistants that have office hours as well. So using all these resources and going to the Office of Graduate Education if you don't know where those resources are. I think if you just know coming into it that you will be supported, which you will, I think it makes the application process so much less stressful.
Perfect. And let's just jump into some audience questions.
Mhm.
So the first question has to do with the statement of purpose. Could you explain, is the statement of purpose broadly about the research experiences that I mentioned in my CV or something more into that? So talk a bit about what students should focus on in their statement of purpose.
Yeah, so to me, there's usually like two essays that you write. The statement of purpose is my personal opinion, is not the same as a personal statement. When you write your personal statement, that is about you and your development, you know, as a student or potential researcher. Your statement of purpose is more so about what you plan to do in graduate school, or like this is where you would like list faculty that you would want to work for. So like uh and it's been a few years since I applied as well, and the semantics of the naming of the applications kind of get mixed up maybe. You will write a research proposal. So there's a few things, right? Statement of purpose, personal statement, and a research proposal. They may or may not all be in the same application. I know for fellowships, they will ask you for a research proposal that is strictly about what you plan on pursuing in graduate school, like the actual projects, aim one, aim two, aim three, etc. Your personal statement is about your progression as a student, a researcher, a person, and your future career goals. Uh, and the statement of purpose sounds a little bit like uh, I may not be the best person to describe what the statement of
And
purpose is,
the good news
unfortunately.
here, this is where our assistants in the background can help us.
Yeah,
We
please.
have a bunch of resources that can help you with answering these questions, including our Grad Catalyst program. So we'll put some links in the chat so that you could get some additional resources. Many of our graduate programs also have application assistance programs, usually called GAAP or GAP programs. We'll put the link to those departments as well in the chat. Brandon, the next question is about MSRP. Would a student who is graduating in May 2025 from an undergraduate institution, will they be eligible to apply to MSRP? What's the sort of requirements for MSRP?
I think Dr. Wakefield or Jocelyn would be better equipped to answer this question, but as far as I know, you must be a non-graduating senior to apply and participate in MSRP. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly. Yes, you have to have at least one semester left after the summer. We're also going to be having some MSRP application workshops coming up in November and December. So if you're interested, we'll have a workshop dedicated to MSRP where we talk about how to prepare a competitive application for the summer program.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me see any additional questions. So someone is getting into you. You mentioned publications are important. How many publications do typical accepted MIT students have? Are all publications created equal in terms of application?
So that's a great question. And I would definitely say it varies. I can share with you my experience, but this is by no means like what is the requirement. I had 3 going into my MIT grad school application, 2 for my undergraduate institution. Again, I worked there for about 3 years. So I was able to contribute to 2 publications while I was an undergrad there. And during my MSRP summer, in addition to my own independent project, which not necessarily was publishable, I contributed on my mentor's project. So kind of on the side, he asked me to collect some data for him for his paper, which was publishable. So because I contributed to my mentor's paper as an MSRP intern, I was able to get 3. I would say that's ambitious to hope to get out of MSRP with your name on a paper. But it's definitely achievable if you express like, hey, I'm fully capable of doing my own independent work. Is there anything I can do, anything you would like me to do to help with your work? I think that's a totally reasonable ask to do, and it could only, if the worst case they say no, say sorry, I got it all undercover. But reasonably, like if you are a motivated researcher, they would give you some question they have to help with their own project. So I think it's definitely attainable. And then to your question, are all publications created equal in terms of application? I wouldn't say it's about like where your name falls in the list, whether you're 2nd, 3rd, or 8th, 9th, it doesn't matter. As long as you can explain what the paper was about, what your specific contribution was, and how that informs the general mission of the lab. I think telling the big picture is really, really important because you're going to be writing these applications for non-technical experts. So being able to say what the science was in a little bit of detail, but what the significance of it was is so much more important than being like, oh, I sequenced the RNA and this is what the complementary DNA was, and these are the genes that have been expressed. Why does it matter? I think that's more important. Being able to describe what your science contribution was in the big picture is more important than where your name fell on that paper.
Perfect. And I think what Brandon is saying there is why a publication may be helpful and is not the be-all and end-all is because a publication sends signals to the admissions committee that you have the skills and the experience that are necessary to be a graduate student. And you could similarly have those send those signals that you have those skills through other means should you not have a publication, right? So don't make it that, oh, I don't have a publication, so I can't apply to MIT. But what are the other scenarios under which you got experience in your undergraduate years that would disproportionately prepare you for
Right.
a PhD? And so, Brandon, I'm looking at the time, so I'll give one last question, but I wanted to shout out that there's someone from South Florida in the session, and they're thanking you for telling your story and can definitely relate to public transportation difficulties in that area.
Yep.
The last question is an important one, so I'll ask it to you. How did you approach initially getting your faculty advisor's attention? Did you
Yeah,
approach
so
them before MSRP, or what ultimately set the ball rolling? So talk a bit about how do you find a lab? How do you find an advisor?
so if you're talking specifically about MSRP, you it's facilitated through the application. So on the MSRP application, you will list faculty that, literally rank 1, 2, 3. These are the faculty I hope to work with and why. So it's up to you then to do the research in the department that you want to be in. Who's doing what research, which faculty is doing something that you can see yourself contributing to, and rank them and explain why. Be like, oh, I want to work with so-and-so because I have experience doing tissue engineering of cardiac tissue, and they're doing disease modeling of cardiac diseases. So, there's a link there, but it could also be, I'm interested in doing so-and-so's work because I want to increase this skill in my toolbox. I want to work, this something that's always interested me. I want to work with them because I want to learn this skill so I can apply it to my future career goals of blah, blah, blah. So it's two ways. You don't need to have experience in the research to join that lab for MSRP. I think it's all a matter of storytelling. Why do you want to join that lab? How is that going to benefit you as a person? And how do your lived experiences, make you suitable for that role? If you're talking about grad school in general, it's basically all on you. It depends on the department, but in mechanical engineering, you have to basically sign a contract with your advisor before you even start. So once you're accepted, then it's on you. You start to search. You do your research on MIT mechanical engineering professors. You find the ones that are doing what you're doing, and then you just reach out cold. Say, hey, I was accepted to the department. I'm interested in your work. Do you have 15 minutes to chat about it? And that's how it goes. And then you make a short list of like 4 or 5 professors, and then you meet with them in person during the in-person visit day. And then you try to lock in a handshake about joining their lab officially in the fall. So it's kind of like speed dating when it comes to finding a faculty match for graduate school. But it's facilitated through MSRP when you're applying to MSRP.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandon. And so my departing question for you, knowing what you know now, one piece of advice you'll give to someone applying to MIT this year.
Ask so many questions. Literally grab hold of any graduate student you can and ask them what their advice is. I've shared with you guys my experience. Get people to read your applications. That's the number one thing. If you had a grad student mentor in a research lab, ask them to read your application. Ask them like what will strengthen my application. Like I said, storytelling is super important, telling the big picture, and just get a ton of people's feedback and make sure that you know what the program is like that you're applying to. So is there a qualifying exam? What is that like? How many years typically is the program? Ask that question. And then when you come down to a research lab, what is the culture of the research lab? Make sure that the lab that you join is a good environmental fit for you. So these are all questions that you need to ask like other graduate students specific to the department or the lab that you're applying to.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us for our first edition of MIT Mondays. Folks, we'll have the recording available on our website for you to access, and feel free to reach out to the grad diversity team at any time should you need additional resources or someone to talk to. And their email is graddiversity@mit.edu. I hope we'll see a bunch of you in our virtual fair tomorrow, where you can hear from each of our MIT graduate programs, and that as you consider applying to MIT in the future, you would definitely connect with our office and other graduate students that we could provide some assistance in connecting you with. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you so much, Brandon, and thank you so much to our attendees. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, everyone.